Well, ladies and gentlemen, he did it again. President Trump has just negotiated yet another impossible deal that absolutely no one thought he would be able to pull off. Well, no one in the mainstream media, at least. You see, 5 days ago on July 24th, Thailand and Cambodia broke out in a war against one another over a border dispute. Dozens of people lost their lives, they were launching artillery shells at each other, and they were even carrying out airstrikes on each other. That is, until President Trump got involved. You know how all of the left-wing geniuses and experts keep on talking about how terrible President Trump's tariffs are? Well, as it would turn out, President Trump was just able to use his trade tariffs to actually bring about peace in Southeast Asia. And hey, if you don't believe me, just take a listen to what President Trump himself had to say about this entire situation just earlier this morning. Let it play.
Well, Thailand's a very big trading partner, and Cambodia lesser so, but they do a lot. And I saw that, I read in a lot of different places, including yours, Breitbart, that they were really going at it. And they do. You know, they've had many conflicts and wars over the years. I guess it's a 500-year period. When I spoke to them, they said 500 years. They said, that's a lot. But now it was raging and raging hard. People were being killed at the border a lot. And I said, listen, we're doing a trading deal. And I said to Thailand, we're doing a trading deal, and I'm not going to do a deal if you're going to be killing each other. And I spoke to Cambodia, said essentially the same thing. I dealt with the two prime ministers. They were terrific people. And they don't want to see a war, but somebody had to implement what I did. And we started a series of discussions back and forth. And within less than a day, we have it settled. And I guess now, based on what you're saying, they've just said we're going to have peace. That's great. Millions of people are going to be saved. You know, those wars turn out to be a disaster. Millions of people get killed, and it's total disruption. And it takes them 40 years to recover, and we were able to stop it before it really started.
And so, folks, that is exactly what just happened. Because of President Trump's tariffs, the bloodshed has ended and the war between Thailand and Cambodia has now come to a screeching halt. But you know what? This isn't even the first time that President Trump has done this. As you all might remember, President Trump recently helped successfully work out a peace deal between India and Pakistan. He negotiated a ceasefire between Iran and Israel, and he's still working to bring about peace in Eastern Europe. In fact, because of all of these peace deals that he's helped negotiate in just the last 6 months alone, right this very moment, President Trump is actually sitting on 3 individual foreign nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize. But now, folks, at this point, what I want to do is move on and take a look at how some of President Trump's biggest doubters have been coping with the fact that all of his tariff negotiations have been working so incredibly well. But before we do, I want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a lot. But okay, take a look at this.
Trump is in danger of proving the truth of an old joke about economists, which is that an economist is someone who sees something work in practice and explains why it will never work in theory. And Trump is challenging the theory that tariffs are terrible for the global economy. I'm with David. I was a skeptic. I still am. I still think we'd be better off without tariffs. But you have to say, so far, the tariffs that we have, which are significant, exactly as you say, Martha, they're not as significant as the ones that he initially proposed in April, but they are really big. The total average tariff now in the US is about 18% as a result of this EU deal. It was 2 to 3% before Donald Trump became president. A lot of people said that would be a disaster. It hasn't been a disaster. Bill Maher's right. The economy is growing. Inflation is stable. The stock market is booming. So I think Donald Trump is demonstrating not only that he is a very, very good deal maker, and this deal with the European Union is an extraordinary one in those terms. It's an incredibly one-sided deal. It's like, you and me doing a deal and you end up owning all of my personal property, Martha. It's an astonishingly one-sided deal. But not only that, but it's also the kind of deal with the tariffs that's in place that are high enough that they will produce more revenue for the U.S., probably produce some more investment in the U.S., but low enough that they don't do so much damage to the economy that people thought.
And so, folks, here's the reality. Just objectively speaking here, all of President Trump's trade negotiations and tariffs have been working so incredibly well that right now, people that were initially skeptical of President Trump's negotiating capabilities are being forced to come to terms with one of two conclusions. They can either admit that they were wrong and that President Trump does, in fact, know what he's doing, or they can try to engage in some form of mental gymnastics to try to downplay all of President Trump's success. And so, frankly, we've been seeing a lot of that lately, but really, his success is just undeniable. In fact, take a look at this.
I remember along with probably most people, was saying at the beginning, oh, by the 4th of July, somebody had to think how the country the economy was going to be tanked by then. And I was kind of like, well, that seems right to me. But that didn't happen. Now, it could happen tomorrow. I'm just saying that's reality. So let's work first from the reality of that, not from I just hate Donald Trump. Because that's boring and doesn't get us anywhere and leads you to dishonesty. Because the truth is, I don't know what his strategy is. But look, the stock market is at record highs. I know not everybody lives by the stock market, but I also drive around. I don't see a country in a depression at all. I see people out there just living their lives. And I would have thought, and I got to own it, that these tariffs were going to sink this economy by this time, and they didn't. So, how do we deal with that fact? Because that's the fact.
Yeah.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, here's the truth. Even one of President Trump's biggest generational haters of all time, Bill Maher, has come to terms with the fact that President Trump's entire approach is just working. It's undeniable. And you know what? While we're speaking about President Trump's approach just working, what do you say we go ahead and talk about President Trump's massive new deal with the Europeans?
And even the European Commission president, you heard what she said. I thought it was very telling. She goes, look, I know this is awful for us. It's the best I could get. I'm trying to salvage them. So I think that indicates, and I don't want to be too jingoistic or America first, but to me that indicated that the president was able to get a pretty good deal.
Exactly right. The president knew how far he could go, and he went exactly that far. The thing about our president is he's got that intuitive nature when he's sitting across the table and making a deal. He knows how far he can push it. I mean, imagine they committed to $750 billion of energy purchases, natural gas and oil and nuclear, during his term. They committed $600 billion of companies investing in America, and then 15% tariffs. They will pay 15% pretty much across the board. And we, of course, have an open market to the $20 trillion European market. It's 5 times bigger than any other, Japan and India, 5 times bigger with 450 million people. It was a masterclass by President Trump.
And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, calling it a masterclass is honestly a pretty big understatement. The reality is, this brand new trade deal is so good for America and so bad for the European Union that right this very moment, tens of millions of Europeans are actually enraged at just how poorly their European Union leadership team performed while negotiating with President Trump. But you know what? Why don't we take a look at why this deal really is such a big deal?
Well, remember, the European Union is $20 trillion economy, 450 million people. I mean, it is head and shoulders bigger than all the other Western civilizations. So the fact is the European Union is the monster deal. President Trump did that deal yesterday. We were all together in Scotland. We got the deal done. So here's how it goes. The European Union is going to pay 15%, and they sell us $600 billion worth of goods. That's $90 billion for America, and they agreed for the first time ever to cut all their tariffs, cut their barriers, and let American businesses and farmers and ranchers and fishermen finally sell into the European Union. Massive market. This is huge for America.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, that really is the big takeaway right there. In essence, in just the last 6 months alone, President Trump has leveraged his America First trade tariffs to not just rebuild the entire global economy in a way that actually finally benefits the United States of America, but also he's helping bring about global peace as well. And so, hey, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you, but between you and me, that is exactly what I voted for.